Hello and welcome to another Orange Coast College mathematics video. In this video, we're going to learn about equations of lines. Mostly, we're going to talk about slope-intercept form of a line, but we'll also talk a little bit about the standard form of a line. Now, here we have the equation of a line written in slope-intercept form. Now, it's called slope-intercept form because it's very easy when you're looking at it to identify both the slope and the y-intercept. Okay, so slope-intercept form is when we have solved for y, so it's y equals on one side, basically y equals, and then we've simplified the other side of the equation. And so when we have this, right, the m is the slope, and the b, whatever that value is the y-intercept. And so you can see why we call this the slope-intercept form of the line, because it's fairly straightforward to find the slope and the y-intercept. This is compared to what's called the standard form of a line, which is when both all of the x and y terms are on the same side and the constant terms are on the other side. So this is what's called standard form right here. So the x and y terms are on one side, any constant terms are on the other side. But with this form, it's more challenging to identify the slope immediately. We begin with an example. Identify the slope and the y-intercept of a line written in slope-intercept form. So all of these equations are written as y equals mx plus b. So the coefficient of x is the slope, and the constant term is the y-intercept. So let's just go through these really quickly. For the first one, the slope is the coefficient of x, that is negative 4/3. The y-intercept is the constant term. So in this case, the y-intercept is 1. For the second one, the coefficient of x, well, there is no coefficient of x, but when there is no coefficient of x, what that really means is the coefficient is 1. So the slope is 1, and the y-intercept, in this case, since it's minus 3, it would be negative 3. Over here, for this part, for C, the coefficient of x is the slope. That would be negative 2. The y-intercept, you could think of this as being plus 0, right? So the y-intercept is just 0. Okay. Now down here, there is no x term, but what that means is that you have plus 0 times x, right? Because you could always write 0x, for instance. So the slope in this case would then just be 0. Okay. And then the y-intercept is the constant term. That would be 2. It doesn't matter if it's b plus mx or mx plus b. It's the constant term is the y-intercept. The coefficient of x is the slope. Finally, for the last one here, the slope is the coefficient of x. That would be 5/2, or 5/2. The y-intercept, in this case, is the constant term, is 1. One thing that's not written here is if you have the equation of a line and there's no y, but there's an x, that means the slope is undefined. You have a vertical line. Example 2. Write the equation of the line 4x minus 5y equals 3 in slope-intercept form and identify the slope and y-intercept. So to write the equation, we have it written in standard form, right? It's kind of like ax plus by equals a constant. To write it in slope-intercept form, we simply solve for y. So if I have 4x minus 5y equals 3, I want to just solve for y, which means it should be which should get y equals something. So I'm going to start by moving all the other non-y terms to the other side. So subtract 4x from both sides. That gives you negative 5y equals negative 4x plus 3. And I need to divide both sides of the equation by negative 5. So when you have two terms, you divide each term by negative 5. So we have y equals negative 4 over negative 5x plus 3 over negative 5. So we can simplify that a little bit. Negative 4 over negative 5 is just 4/5. And then we have minus 3/5. So the slope is the coefficient of x, which is 4/5. And the y-intercept is the constant term, which is negative 3/5. Here's our final example. Write the equation of the line y minus 2 equals 3 times x plus 1 in the standard form and identify the x and y intercepts. So to write it in standard form, what we need to do is move all of the x terms and the y terms to one side of the equation, and then all of the constant terms to the other, and then simplify. So let's start here. We have y minus 2 equals 3 times x plus 1. So we start by simplifying both sides of the equation. So on the left-hand side, we have y minus 2. On the right-hand side, we distribute the 3. So it's 3x plus 3 is what we get. And then I want to move all of the variable terms to one side. So we'll call it the left side. So we'll subtract 3x from both sides. I want to move all the constant terms to the other side. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides here. And that will give me negative 3x plus y equals 5. And that is the standard form. Now to find the intercepts, we can just use the technique we learned from that video on intercepts. To find the x-intercept, we set y equals to 0 and solve for x. To find the y-intercept, we set x equals 0 and solve for y. So by setting x equal to 0, we get y equals 5 is the y-intercept. And if we set y equal to 0, we get negative 3x equals to 5. And then if we solve this for x, we get the x-intercept. So we get negative 3. This is divided by negative 3 on both sides. And we get that x is 5 over negative 3, or just negative 5/3. That is the x-intercept. And that's it for the equations of lines. Now remember, slope-intercept form is when we've solved for y. So when you've solved the equation for y, you should have y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. Standard form is when all of the x and y terms are on one side and the constant terms are on the other side. So you should be comfortable going from one to the other and then identifying intercepts and slope from either. Until next time, have fun.